Welcome back to another edition of Chat Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Chat Call, the newsletter, on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today, we welcome Adrian Coots of T-Days, CEO and co-founder of Solitude AI. Welcome to the show, Adrian.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm kind of excited to get in today. AI is something that we have talked about a lot on the show, but rarely have we kind of gotten into the nitty-gritty like we do today. So before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and why you started Solitude.
Sure. So we started Solitude in 2023, and this is actually my fourth company that I've co-founded over my career. I've done a few over the years in various spaces. I've built a few marketplaces. One of them was for commodity trading, scaled that to a few million annual recurring revenue. And then I also did a bit of a stint in biotech, but really my heart was in AI. So my thesis when I was in university was actually building AI agents way back when, so before they were popular, and basically building them for medicine. And I built a whole infrastructure and some software that could design medicines, and I built agents that would collaborate with each other to design these medicines, or more specifically proteins. And that was my thesis. So once sort of ChatGPT came onto the scene, and then more formally AI agents sort of came back around popularity. But only this time the technology was much more mature. I was super excited to have a chance, well, rather have another crack at this, and actually get to solving some real problems with a technology that is really my bread and butter expertise. So when we started, and agents first came onto the scene, the first thing my co-founder and I thought of was, well, we have to find like a really big, significant problem to solve. We actually started out with a different idea, and when we were building that idea, and I sort of did what I think many people do today, and many of our customers do, which is I really want AI for my marketing, I really want AI for my sales, I really want AI for my accounts payable, accounts receivable roles. And when we went out to look on the market, there were not many solutions for this around, or there wasn't any one common platform sort of solution, and there were many solutions for these specific functions. But by the time you sort of go out and try things and test them out in your business and see if they're right for you, it's a really time consuming and honestly just a really confusing and complicated process. And I have a degree in computer science, and even I found it, confusing. So I can imagine, other business owners who are fighting every day to keep the business alive, optimize their margins and operations. They don't really have time to go through this really long sales process. So we sort of realized that would be the big problem. That'll be the problem of tomorrow. The way we work is going to change. We won't just be hiring people; we'll also be hiring these agents that do all the boring work that we don't want to do. And so we sort of built that common platform there. And in the past year, after a lot of work, a lot of really hard effort from the entire team, and on my background, I actually did a bit of work in logistics really early on in my career. We ended up settling on 3PLs and freight brokers as one of our first markets, because we found that these guys could really benefit so much from this software. 3PL is a really hard business. 3PL, freight forwarding, freight brokerage. It's a really, really, really hard business, and you have small teams doing humongous work with limited resources, pulling off these huge deals. And being able to optimize a margin by 1 or 2% can be huge for your billing cycle, and especially in a vertical where customer service can really be the differentiator between whether you win the deal or not. We found that our message and our first agent, which really automates accounts payable and accounts receivable specifically for 3PLs, freight brokers, and freight forwarders, was a really, really big help there in time saving, cost saving, and really reducing the billing to cash cycle, which is how fast you can get the carrier invoice in and then invoice your own customer, we've managed to shrink that down significantly.
I mean, to me, as a former a pricing, auditing, invoicing person, anything that we can do to improve that, anything is a win in my book, because it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and it's a lot of no really good way to automate something unless you kind of overhaul an entire system, which is it's a lot. That's a tall undertaking. So I think any kind of marginal improvement there, as you guys have been able to make, is a huge win in that area. Because as you mentioned, freight brokering is hard. The margins are tight, and every cent really does matter, and it really does add up when it gets to those savings. But moving into kind of how the industry is working with AI, it's kind of everywhere. AI is the new buzzword. That visibility was a couple years ago. And so a lot of people are saying, okay, well, we want to adopt AI. We want to adopt AI. However, they are choosing to do that. But a lot of people are saying, okay, so if we adopt this AI, well, what happens next? What is it something we should be diving into? There's that healthy amount of worry and skepticism there. So, from what you guys have gone out and had these conversations with people, what are some of those common concerns that you hear when it does come to adopting AI in your organization?
That's a really great question. So in speaking to customers, what comes up a lot, I think, is security. I think that's definitely one of the first concerns, and I'll like address that in a second. Another one is, and I think in particular when it comes to 3PLs, this comes up often, is well, how will this affect our current workflows? How will this affect our team? Do we have to completely lift and shift the way that we've been working to get AI into our business? And I think that's been a really big barrier of entry, because building a business is really hard. I don't have to tell anyone that. But then finding a system that works, that's repeatable for your sales process, for ops, for finance and accounting, and sort of joining all those things up, is really hard. And when you finally find that one system that works, you're very skeptical, excuse me, about breaking it or introducing new things that could disrupt it if it's not going to be a significant value add. So I think that those are typically a lot of the most common concerns. And then you have things like pricing. I think is a really common concern. So I think in the old software, or in sort of this period that we went through of software as a service, where we sort of pay subscription prices for things, I know that a lot of software was actually really expensive, especially for small to medium brokers, forwarders, 3PLs. Sometimes it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, and it's just not viable for certain kinds of businesses. And we can sort of address the other concerns in a second. I think that one of the biggest breakthroughs in AI actually isn't just sort of the technology, but the business model, because now there's this new pricing model emerging, which is basically cost of work done almost. So rather than paying a flat fee, which for a piece of software which you may or may not use, you can actually just pay for what you do use. And that's really amazing for businesses of all sizes, because it means it scales to how much business you do, especially in a seasonal business like logistics or freight forwarding. That's really important. You don't really want to be paying huge sums when you have like a low season, but you also want to be able to scale up when you have a high season and really capture all that business coming in.
So it's kind of balancing that demand for needing this project, but also not spending like the entire budget on it, especially when you don't need the entire budget's worth I don't want to say capacity, but the bandwidth for the entire budget. You don't need that year round. You maybe just need it when your busy cycle is. Because I mean, if you're a freight brokerage that specializes in automotive parts and fresh produce, which is a weird two things to specialize in, but it is what it is. You know that you're gonna be busier in the summer. You're not gonna be as busy in the winter because it's just not the season for one of your like main industries that you service. So that's gonna be kind of nice that I know that, okay, in my downtime, excuse me, in my downtime, I'm not still stuck with this same potentially astronomical bill where I'm sitting there going, well, in my busy times, I can cover this no problem. But in my slow times, what am I doing here? How am I going to do this? It kind of goes with you. And I think that's a really interesting approach because it also, it allows you to kind of plan around things. And if you say, okay, well, we know that our busy times will get us through the winter time or winter or not the winter times, get us through the slow times. It's important that you can kind of have more visibility into that cost structure. And I think that's something that not a lot of people really offer.
Yeah, I think a lot of AI businesses are starting to come around to that wave now, but it's really important now, and it's really going to be a model that unlocks, I think, a lot of like productivity. It means that you can plan, and we sort of see that with like freight brokers, 3PLs. Like there are lots of part-time roles that pop up in our customers' businesses that sort of come on and then go away, and that's because they have this capacity problem. So now with the new software and all these kind of like new technologies, it's a lot easier just to pay for what you use, and that's it. A good old school business, to be honest.
So I guess when it comes to if I'm a 3PL or a freight broker and I'm looking to stick my toe into the AI situation, if I'm saying, "Hey, I want to get this going. I want to kind of we're maybe in a slow season or we're gearing up for retail peak season and I say, "Okay, I want to start looking at some of these options maybe I can implement in the new year or before the end of this year." How do I know what is like a good company and how do I know what's not? Like how do I know someone that is just on the AI bandwagon train because everybody's on it? Or how do I know someone that like they're here for the long haul? They're going to be a strong, valuable partner.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think off the bat, as an expert myself, who's been working with AI for just over really 10-ish years now. I think anyone that says I can give you AI for your business that is completely end-to-end automated with no human supervision needed, that's really a red flag for my book. For a number of things. If you think about just hiring a person, every person, no matter how good they are, needs training in your business. And your business is really unique. You have unique customers, you have unique relationships with those customers. You have sometimes very specific processes with each customer. And just like hiring a person, that person needs to, even if they're an expert in whatever you're hiring them for, whether that's finance or accounting or sales, they need to now take their skills and become an expert in your business. And so I think any AI solution that's saying end-to-end full automation, don't no human involvement needed, you should take a really, really serious look at that. Um, and then the other thing I think is a lot of businesses that won't let you like try the software first. In our experience, when working with some vendors in our supply chain, and some business partners in the past, they've offered and say, "Hey, look, we have this AI agent or solution, and it's really good at document scanning." We were like, "Great, we're gonna onboard that into our company." Then we tried out the software, and man, it just wasn't accurate at all. We had to just build it ourselves in house. So that's another thing. Really look for trial periods, or at least a sort of demo environment, that kind of thing, and look for solutions that let you stay in control and stay on top of things.
I think that's a really important point. I know that a trial period isn't necessarily applicable in all situations. Like you can't just trial integrate a TMS, but you can, like you said, with the document scanning, you can in that demo environment, you can say, okay, well, here's a couple of my BOLs. Can you run it through the scanner and see how it does? Because I also am always a little hesitant of the demo environments because everything has been crafted to work perfectly and to be seamless. Because obviously it's a demo environment, you want to show off the best and the brightest, but it's also something of like, okay, well, what happens if I put my stuff in? Like, what does that look like? How long would that take you to implement this into there? And I do think that anyone that gets kind of cagey about a demo or a kind of trial period, I do have to agree with you there. That is not necessarily someone that I personally want to be partnering with, because if you're getting cagey before we even get invested together, what's going to come out down the line?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Like really give your documents, try a document on their system, see how it goes through, whether it's a POD or a bill of lading from a carrier, rate confirmation, notice of assignment, whatever it might be. Just give them that document or carrier invoice, customer invoice. Give them that document and just say, yeah, scan this, see if you can extract it out. And it'll be pretty telling if they're very open about it and say, yep, here, come try it. That's a really good signal of confidence in their solution that they've worked really hard to create. And I think a biggest lesson that we've learned, especially on our platform and in my experience, is that there's a big difference between something that makes for a really nice demo and works maybe 70% of the time or even 90% of the time, and something that works in the real world 100% of the time reliably. And just another thing there, I also um, wouldn't get reliability confused with accuracy. So I think if you ever have someone approach you and says, look, we are 110% accurate, no matter what, we're going to pull it out super accurately and won't be any mistakes. As of today, we're just not there yet. You can even sort of go talk to ChatGPT or other sort of like large AI infrastructure players, and they'll say, yeah, there's an issue with what's known as hallucinations, which is where the AI can like make up information, and you need lots of really, really, really great engineering applied to the solution to really remove those things. And even then, just as a sanity check, it's still important to have a human person review those things and approve them. And I think that the really sophisticated products not only put that person in the loop, but with every approval, with every sort of review you give the AI actually learns and adapts to your business.
And I think that's a really true testament that, like, obviously, the more you use it, the more you teach it, the more it learns, the better it's going to be. But at the beginning, you can't just unleash this and say, okay, we're done, ready to go. Like, no, you have to continually monitor it to make sure that it's doing the right thing. And then after a couple months or even a year, you still have to double check and say, okay, like, I'm just going to spot check some things. I'm going to make sure that nothing is getting too haywire out of control, because that's how you end up with like a funny story that somebody got a car for $1 with an AI chatbot on a website. And that's something that, is a funny headline, but is not something that we all need to experience in real life.
It's funny to read about, but really serious when it happens to you. So yeah, we definitely want to avoid those kind of situations.
Absolutely. And so kind of when it comes to those kind of sticky situations, it's something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and that's kind of the data privacy when it comes to AI. A lot of people are real hesitant in that area. How do you kind of reassure customers and say, hey, you don't have to really feel nervous about feeding sensitive data into an AI or machine learning system? It's not like gonna get leaked everywhere. How do you reassure your customers on that part?
That's a great question. And it's a really interesting question because I think that if you go to lots of landing pages that might look really fancy or they pay for a really expensive designer to make it, none of them talk a lot about data privacy, where data is stored, but also where data is processed, which is also a differentiator because you can store it in one place, say, the US, but process the data in Germany or overseas, in other sorts of territories. So those two questions are really important ones. So a big differentiator for what we do and what I really recommend that customers look for in general is first of all to ask those questions. Number two, what we do is we have built infrastructure that ensures that all data is stored and processed wherever you, the customer, want it to be. So that means if you want to make sure that all your data is stored and processed in the US, we make sure that it's all co-located there in the US. And that's because we, in particular, run our own language models and serve them on our own servers, essentially. And so we can handpick where those things get basically popped up and then popped down respectively. The same goes for customers in Europe or other sorts of territories. We can even go so far as to store and process data within on your own servers if you use the cloud, or in literally your own office if you just happen to have some GPUs lying around. Depending on different customers, that's not always a solution I recommend, because that's really pricey to bring in your own infrastructure. And part of the benefits of, sort of, as technology becomes more of a commodity over time, is you get the benefits of economies of scale. And so using cloud infrastructure or using ours that will guarantees in your territory lets you benefit from how cheap it is at that scale. But for customers, and we've definitely had this in the past, who say, hey, look, no, I really want to make sure this is all on premise or in my office. I want to be able to like look at it as it runs. That's something that we do, and that's something that I think is really important to offer to any serious business.
I think that's incredibly important because also if you're talking to a company, and again, this comes back to if they get cagey, if they get squirrely, if they start getting weird about data privacy and everything like that, then that for me, if you're not willing to honor like the base level of like where I want my data hosted, if you're not going to honor that at the baseline level, even at the beginning of this relationship, then to me that's just like a red flag for bigger problems down the road.
Yeah, and especially in AI, I think the problem actually becomes more complicated as well. This is because a lot of companies, there's this like idea of a ChatGPT wrapper, and this means that like although they built a business, the entire business relies on ChatGPT. Um, and there's an issue for this for customers who are very sensitive to the data privacy, because that actually means that all your data that you give to that company gets fed into ChatGPT. So why is this an issue? ChatGPT may still store data in the US. Well, depending on that particular vendor's relationship with ChatGPT, that means that ChatGPT will train their next model that you can go to the website and use on your data. And so what this can do, it can lead to almost kind of like leaks of information, where because you have models trained on lots of data from everyone, if you go to ChatGPT and you type in just the right things, kind of like an old school Atari cheat code or something like that, you type in just the right things into these models, you can actually get them to just blurt out a full list of like names and sometimes even private information. And there's a lot of work going into this now in the security industry to really lock this down. So, because myself and many members of the team have backgrounds in telecom, which is a very regulated industry and very sensitive to data privacy, given the nature of telecommunications infrastructure and national security. This was a big problem at the forefront of our minds when building what we're building. So the approach that we took, and I think other sophisticated vendors take, is, especially because we control our models, we don't rely on ChatGPT. We actually basically provide a model per customer. So the model that you use as a customer, only you use that model, and only your data is fed into that model. And when that AI learns and picks up, details about your business, that's only isolated to you, and only you have that model. So the benefit of that is sort of two pronged. On one hand, the more you use the software, the more of an expert it becomes in your business alone. And so that's something that becomes another source of value and intellectual property that can power your business. Secondly, it means that your data is not being fed into this large pool where other people might be able to hack it or hack the model and type in just the right things into the chat box or prompt and get your data, because everyone gets their own model and that information is not shared at all.
I really like that everybody kind of gets their own section and it's sectioned off so that way it's not kind of getting messy and muddying the waters. That's a very interesting feature that you guys have. But that being said, we are just about out of time today, but there's a question that everybody comes on the show has to answer. And yours is going to be, if you could build a house out of any food, what would you choose?
Yeah, I thought long and hard about this question, and I think something that wouldn't get blown down in a fairy tale about three piglets and a wolf is probably a good direction for that. So in that respect, although it's all edible, so kind of questionable. In that respect, I might say like really dried, old beef jerky is kind of where I'm at with that. It's sturdy, so I feel
Ooh.
like I feel something with that. And then a- people are saying, okay, it's meat, so a wolf might still come and chow it down. If it's so old that it is dried and basically a carcass, let's say, I think it would also turn away most wolves. They probably look for any kind of like a prey. So it's also kind of a hiding in plain sight kind of construction. So that's the best answer I could come up with on the spot that could I could feasibly build something out of if I was forced.
I like that because also if the wolf is gonna come eat your beef jerky house, they're gonna have to chew off a piece of the beef jerky house, which is going to be essentially impossible.
Yeah, that which is essentially impossible. It'd probably be chugging away at it for at least 10 minutes. And it's like an early alarm system. If you hear chewing outside, then it's probably time to get out of there.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us today. If anyone has any questions about what we've talked about today, where can they find you outside the show?
So you can find us on LinkedIn at Solitude at Solitude. You can find us on Twitter at Solitude Agents, and my personal Twitter, Adrian Coots. That's ADRIANCOUTS. And of course, check out our website, Solitude AI. And if you want to book a call with us, even just to discuss more about what we spoke about here today and what we're doing to sort of help brokers and 3PLs even prevent fraud and optimize their business, we'd love to have a chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.